Well, this is the last Sunday in March. Tomorrow's the last day of March, and I must say I'm looking forward to April and perhaps some springier days ahead. I don't think the thermometer got above freezing. I kept watching. Well, it's good to see everyone here. We may be a smaller crowd today. Glad to see each one of you here. Prelude this morning is Who Happens Next by Josh Johnson. He's a young saxophonist, composer, multi-instrumentalist. Plays on some of his albums, everything on it he plays. He's a Grammy Award-winning producer. So today's Prelude, Who Happens If, comes off his second album, which was titled Unusual Object. It's a creative work for futuristic jazz, modern composition. He's also recorded for Red Hot Chili Peppers and Miley Cyrus, currently lives in L.A. But on this song, you're going to hear a saxophone played through a synthesizer, which gives it an interesting, modern art feel and look to it. This is titled Who Happens If? Well, if you've been following the headlines lately, it feels very much like an up and down, a high and low kind of ride. When you wake up in the morning, it's hard to tell which way and what way the day is going to go. When I feel like this, it helps when I remember a short Zen teaching or Zen adage that consists of 6 words. I first heard this years ago when Hugh Curran, a Buddhist teacher at Morgan Bay Zendo in Surrey, Maine, also a lecturer in the Peace and Reconciliation Studies program at the University of Maine, who also spoke here at the Unitarian Society on one occasion back in the late 90s. He told a story about Umen, who was a 10th century Chinese Chan master during the Tang Dynasty. When Umen was asked, "How do you start your day?" he replied, every day is a good day. It's a deep and practical teaching to consider, though it's only 6 words. Although life and daily circumstances might be favorable or unfavorable, positive or negative, what matters most is that you are here. You are breathing. You can look around and take it all in. You can feel the sensations in your own body and move a bit. All that in itself is a good day. Make of it what you will. Don't waste a minute. Every day is a good day. For a moment of centering silence, let us enter this day in the best way that we can. We are here. Let us breathe and listen to the sound of the singing bowl. Today's service is a continuation of our theme, and the topic is virtue. One of the key concepts about virtue, that we're going to elaborate a bit on today, is that virtue arises out of our own interior space, and that even in the middle of confusion and the incessant chatter in our own head, the silence is there. Opening words are from Sylvia Boorstein's book, It's Easier Than You Think. She's a Zen teacher. One of her other stories were on the support page this week, if you happen to read it. It's titled, Still a Schmuck. Sylvia says, it's probably a sign of the times, but I've gotten some of my best spiritual information from television talk shows. I remember watching Larry King interviewing a Swami in the Hindu tradition. I don't remember exactly what the Swami said, but I do remember his demeanor was calm and unruffled. Although the phone calls from viewers were often either antagonistic or, at the very least, skeptical, the Swami kept a clear and contented presence about himself, responding to each question with clarity, precision, and even quiet humor. Larry King is an interviewer known for the directness of his style and his probing questions. At one point, he leaned across his desk, looked into the Swami's unblinking eyes, and he said to him, "How did it get so quiet in here?" The Swami replied, "It is quiet in there. You just ruffled it up so much." We all have the same, essentially quiet mind. We just ruffled it up so much. Let us light our chalice. Since you're again so close by, you have logical choices. Light our chalice. We light the chalice today for a calm clarity of soul that enlightens our being, even in the midst of a chaotic and clamor. Let us sing. Number 129. Let love continue long. And let us stand as you are able. more. I selected it due to the words. And Dale said he recognized the tune. It's a beautiful piece, though challenging to sing.
There's a sermon in those words, and I say amen to that.
So thank you, Dale, for leading us in that hymn. Our group reading is number 606. And this was selected to go along with our reading topic today. It's from the Taoist tradition. In the bulletin, you'll notice the yin-yang symbol. And this is actually taken from the 25th chapter of the Tao Te Ching. There are many translations out there. The words of Lao Tzu. Let us do this reading this morning. I'll read the bold. If you read the italicized. Before creation, a presence existed, self-contained, complete, formless, voiceless, mateless, changeless, which yet pervaded itself with unending motherhood.
Though there can be no name for it, I have called it the way of life.
Perhaps I should have called it the fullness of life, since fullness implies widening into space, implies still further widening, implies widening until the circle is whole.
In this sense, the way of life is fulfilled, heaven is fulfilled, earth is fulfilled, and a fit person also is fulfilled.
There are the four amplitudes of the universe, and a fit person is one of them.
People rounding the way of earth, earth rounding the way of heaven, heaven rounding the way of life, till the circle is full.
Our offertory this morning is one of the most popular songs by Emir Deodato. It's a Brazilian composer back from the 1970s. This is titled Cartola in Carolina. And for the usher this morning, I'm going to recruit Dawn. If you would assist.
We don't have anything
Let's get the cards and plans.
to do that one.
gorilla walks into a bar and says, "A scotch on the rocks, please." And the gorilla hands the bartender a $10 bill. Bartender thinks to himself, this gorilla doesn't know the price of drinks. And he gives him 15 cents change back. Bartender says, "You know, we don't get many gorillas in here." And the gorilla replied, "Well, at $9.85 a drink, I ain't coming back either." So the title of today's talk, number 10 in our series, is Lessons on Virtue, or Don't Cheat the Gorilla. When I was a child, my father would take me to the meat counter at our local grocery store. That looked a lot like the image on today's bulletin on the front. And I was fascinated by the large white metal scales that weighed the customer's purchase. And we waited in line until our turn came. Dad loved going to the meat market, and he knew the meat cutter himself, and he would make his selection. My father used to say, "Always watch the meat man's thumb when he puts your item on the scale." I think that was one of my earliest lessons in Honesty, Virtue 101. So a couple of years ago, this was 2017, we did a series of talks here on the perennial philosophy, a book by Aldous Huxley. And out of those talks, I put together an e-book, and it was titled Ping Pong Zen. And this is the cover on that particular e-book publication. And I did send this out maybe a month and a half ago to your email account if you wanted to start reading this digital book. If you didn't happen to get it, I can resend it. It's a large file. Just let me know, and I can send it to you. What I've noticed is there's a lot of overlap between the content we looked at in the perennial philosophy and what we're doing this year on studying the science of religion in our UU shared values. The early part of the book, you'll notice, part 1 is on religious pluralism, which is the first thing that we really took a look at when we looked at our Science of Religion series here. One thing that comes up in Ping Pong Zen are what's known as the two truths, or oneness and two-ness, or essentially, which comes up in philosophy over and over again, is the absolute and the relative, where oneness would be this hard to define, unnamed, mysterious content of the absolute, and the terminology or God, or divine language, would be directed towards this idea of the absolute or oneness. Two-ness is the world of relativity, world of opposites, up, down, black, white, good, evil, hot, cold. And in Taoism, looking at this today, with the yin-yang symbol, is really working with this concept, getting a feel for the nature of reality as this interplay between oneness and two-ness. The outline that we used in Huxley's book to break down the topics, it was 3 main points. And it's very similar to things that we're approaching with the science of religion. Part 1 was on metaphysics, or the nature of the absolute. It was physics and metaphysics, the physical world, and the visible world and the invisible world. And we've been looking at that in the science of religion. Part 2 is on psychology, the nature of the self, or the ego self, how we work with our own nature in the world. And the third broad category was ethics, or the nature of values, or virtue. When comparing world religions and their universal common themes, ethics is probably the one area that's the easiest to see. The primary ethics are also what keep a religious tradition free of corruption or true to its core values: equality, tolerance, peace, justice. In Christianity, the golden rule of love your neighbor as yourself is a summation. Ethics and variations of this golden rule are found in all major religions, the ways of stating that. So in Ping Pong Zen, part 6 is on virtue. And we're going to look at the Tao Te Ching briefly, or the definition of breaking it down. Tao is the way, Day is virtue, and Ching is a book. Put it all together and you have the book of the way and virtue. Day, or virtue, how I see it in this study, is really is movement, and it flows from the source, oneness or absolute, to poetically known in Taoism as the 10,000 things, or the world of relativity, nameless, endless, and they use a large number like 10,000 things to cover all of duality. This movement can be strong or weak. It can flow smoothly, or this flow can be blocked or inhibited. Opening or allowing the free flow of this energy information, we're called day, or virtue, is part of the alignment or an attunement process of an individual operating in an increasingly larger system of the 10,000 things. Virtue is the flow of energy information from the unmanifest world, or the absolute or oneness, into the manifest world of relativity, or the 10,000 things. We are a conduit for its flow. We, as one of these 10,000 things of form in this myriad world, in this manifest world, we express our true nature as virtue, or day. Oftentimes you'll hear me refer to our true nature, or our truest nature, at the end of a service, as a tagline at the end. And I identify this true nature, or our truest nature, as love, as light, compassion. And after today's talk, you really could add virtue as that same type of expression of love, light, high frequency vibration of the day that's flowing from source into the world, the larger world. So when it comes down to the psychology, or the nature of self, if the ego self is preoccupied with itself, selfish or immature, the expression of positive human qualities will be limited and diminished. If the ego self is what's actualized, or attainment, exhibited by selflessness, will be a mature expression of positive human qualities. These will be expanded and flow and enlarged. Positive and negative energies exist as potential in each individual, and virtue arises out of the harmony or balance of those energies. You cannot have one without the other. And the expression of this often is truth, or beauty, or virtue. If the individual is out of balance or dominated by negative energies, virtue loses its power and is diminished. So going back to this yin-yang symbol, which we're familiar with. I have it on this frying pan that we use this as a teaching tool in Qigong class, in Tai Chi, where you move from your center, or the lower dantian is this grounding and center point, or the source in your own physical body of this yin-yang symbol. So the key really is the balance between white and black. And you'll notice the dots are interspersed to show just how integrated they are in this. You can envision it as a spherical ball or as a flat two-dimensional circle. But the swirl, if you put this in motion as an animation, you would see it moving, or if it was a sphere, it would be rotating and spinning in all different directions, three-dimensionally. And in the center is what's called the still point. In the dead center, well, everything else is in motion and moving and swirling. But one thing that doesn't is that one still point in the center of the sphere or in the middle of the circle. And no matter how fast you spin the yin and the yang, what's motionless is dead center, or the 0 point. And that is, back to the oneness and two-ness, that center still point is the absolute. That's oneness that holds it. Everything that rises out of that and goes into the spin of two-ness, which is endless, and it can get as large or small, fast or slow as it can. So the black and white, they're indisposable. You cannot eliminate one from the other. It's not a black versus white dynamic to try to eliminate one of them. It's a matter of balancing the two, harmony, and it can be as large or small, or the frequency can be as high or low, or the voltage of that image. But what you're trying to achieve is harmony and balance for the flow to move, or in this case, virtue or day. So I'd like to do a short reading from his book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Pearson. Is one thing that we featured in Ping Pong Zen. In this book, Pearson combines a road trip with his son on a motorcycle with reflections on life, philosophy, values, and motorcycle maintenance. Pearson develops the concept quality as his way of working with everything that is. And here's his definition from the book. Quality is a characteristic of thought and statement that is recognized by a non-thinking process. Because definitions are a product of rigid, formal thinking, quality cannot really be defined. But even though quality cannot be defined, everyone knows what it is when you see it. There is a difference between something that has quality and something that doesn't. And each person, you may have a particular specific opinion on what you view as beautiful or quality. But there's definitely a difference between the two, and most people can spot it. Here's more from Pearson. He says, so the thing to do when working on a motorcycle, as in any other task, is to cultivate the peace of mind which does not separate oneself from one's surroundings. When that is done successfully, then everything flows naturally. Peace of mind produces right values produce right thoughts produce right actions, and right actions produce work, which will be a material reflection for others to see of the serenity at the center of it all. It's a material reflection of the spiritual reality. The real cycle you're working on is yourself. The machine that appears to be out there, and the person that appears to be in here are not two separate things. They grow towards quality or fall away from quality together. So the question I'd like to introduce to our study on the science of religion is, what is quality? Or you could say, what is virtue? Virtue is a quality of our own being. Whatever level or expression that might look like is the level of quality that it contains. So in today's bulletin, you'll see a list of virtues. And these come from Ping Pong Zen, this list in the bulletin. And what we did several months ago on the components of religion, we came up with a lot of these components identified what they are virtues, or in the category of virtues or expressions. And it's kind of interesting to compare these two lists. These virtues in the bulletin came out of the same kind of exercise we did back in 2017 when we took a survey of lists of virtues. And this is what we came up with in the bulletin. And in this exercise, you can pick out a lot of similar virtues shown up on both lists. Each virtue can be expressed with varying range. You can almost put a score on it of how strong one of these qualities, such as calmness. If you going to rate your calmness scale from 0 to 10, what would you be feeling? How would your calmness rate? Or humility, or flexibility. How do you rate your quality of flexibility today on a score of 0 to 10? Daniel Goleman came up with a book back in the 90s called Emotional Intelligence. And he called it, instead of IQ or intelligence, it was EQ, or emotional intelligence. In Ping Pong Zen, we also use the term SQ, or spiritual intelligence. Of what level of maturity or the expression of your being would indicate qualities of an individual who is mature, loving, stable. And you can look at these enlightened qualities or virtues and put it on a scale, just to kind of help orient of how, of where a person is at. We've been talking about on the theology of love a few weeks ago, the aim of trying to raise the frequency or the quality of that love as high as possible is part of this process in the science of religion, is to push yourself, or how do you cultivate those qualities or that energy of, you can feel it in your body, it has an emotional quality to it, and your actions in the world. But how high can you bring that frequency of love? Yogananda called it bliss love as his definition of a spiritual life and his expression. When we opened up the Cup Cafe, this was one of the signs that we had for our staff. No one saw it. No customers coming in would not see this. But behind the bar, this was for the staff, part of our training was the person standing in front of you is your next task to focus on, and whatever that is your job. Basic customer service. But it's also an expression of, or this flow of the right action or whatever that task is, to do it to the right timing, the best of your ability to provide that interaction. It was just a kind of slogan reminder that every volunteer from the cafe, as they walked into the space, they would see this before they walked out. If you go down to the cafe right now, there's a coffee house earlier this winter. One of the musicians told a story about his father had this phrase, and it went, "Never miss an opportunity to make a beautiful gesture." And when he said it in this conversation, I said, I need to remember that. And sure enough, 2 days later, when I came back to try to remember what he said, I'd forgotten it. And I looked in the cafe space, and on our whiteboard, one of our volunteers had written it down from that same conversation. Never miss the opportunity for a beautiful gesture. What I'd like to do is point out, there's two short outlines. First one is 4 points of virtue, and the second one is 4 points of happiness. Number one on 4 points of virtue is the importance of accessing a calm center. It's going back to our opening words with the Swami and Larry King. It's like we all have it. It's inside our head and our heart, that quiet center. But how do you access it? Calm it down, or allowing a pond that has ripples on it and waves, or the ruffling of your mind, as the Swami was saying. How do you calm the surface so it becomes still and quiet to reflect what's going on? And spiritual practices come up on this list of components of religion, and that's one way to develop or to work on how do you access that calm center in your own being, in your own psychology, in that ego self. How do you practice that or access it? Number two, virtue is the quality of our being. And the challenge is to increase that quality or that EQ. All these virtues, pick anyone off the list, and it's like how clear, how high of a rating can you give to that quality, which is our quality of our own being. Number three, allow the clear and open flow of this virtue, this quality of your being. And this again comes back to what are practices that create open to remove blockages or our stuckness, and how do we find ways to open up what is inside of us to flow smoothly. And number four is how to increase the quality and volume of that virtue, any one of these qualities. How do we keep increasing that flow and that quality? Are parts of the conversations, part of the practice, part of the study. But that's the goal, is to increase the quality and volume of whatever that virtue might be. In today's reading, in 606, it talked about the Tao and 4 amplitudes of the universe. The way of life, heaven, earth, And a fit person was number 4. And that would be that description of virtue, a person who is having high rates exhibiting those qualities would be, in the Taoist term, a fit person of virtue. So 4 points of happiness. In the bulletin, you'll see a couple of quotes on the left-hand side, one by Emerson and one by J. Krishnamurti, where Emerson says, beauty is its own excuse for being. And I return over and over again to beauty and truth and love are these qualities of our being that need to be expressed. They want to get out. And Krishnamurti's quote, this you can break it down into 4 points. He says that happiness does not come into being when you seek it. It's essentially a byproduct. And it comes into being when there are 4 things. When there is goodness, when there is love, when there is no ambition or selfish desire, and when the mind is quietly seeking out what is true. Going back to that center, quiet spot within each of us. And what comes out of that is what's true, what's good. Love and selflessness. One question to consider is, when under duress, how does your virtue hold up? Or lacking virtue, you can see it expressed as qualities, and this gets back to what we've been talking about, lighting the candles today, our concerns about what's going on in the world around us. And when you are lacking virtue, what you see being expressed can be cruel, vulgar, violent, violating, dismissive qualities, disruptive, destabilizing, going back to this exclusive, self-interest would be what happens, what you end up with if virtue is lacking. Where you're getting low scores of expressing virtues can lead to those types of emotions, feelings, and expression. So in closing, I'd like to read just one paragraph from the essay by Reverend Sherry Prudhomme, There is a Love Holding Us. It was in today's study material on the support page. This comes out of chapter 13 from our book, Love at the Center, titled A Larger Love. There are real limits to human love, and loving just as there are great blessings. There are real limits to human love. I'll say that there are real limits to human love and loving, just as there are great blessings and surprises. We can do our best to love one another and to be a force of love in the world while growing our capacity to be with the messiness, contradictions, disappointments, and paradoxes of living and loving in human communities. It is my hope that our religious communities will become more practiced at offering the kinds of adult faith development and mutual support that will encourage growth in our spiritual lives, including our abilities to experience being held and nourished by love within, among, and beyond ourselves. So with that, David, let us sing. Number 414, and if you'll play it through one time, we will sing it through one time.
I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. If you'd like to show your support, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel if you're not already subscribed, and help us out by sharing this message by clicking the share button. If you'd like to make a monetary donation to you, Church Holden, there is a link to our online donations in the video description down below. And again, thank you so much and have a blessed day.